With the whole success regarding Clair Obscur Expedition 33 being the biggest, most appreciated game of the year, and easily a frontrunner for Game of the Year this year, you might think, wait, what other franchises could probably benefit from Clair Obscur's success? Sure enough, Final Fantasy is one of those franchises, because for those of you guys that might not know, because for maybe the past, I want to say 15 to 17 years of Final Fantasy has mostly been either, well, not counting re-releases, but rather original releases from the past 15 years. Most of them, if not all of them, have been action-oriented games, or games that have had some RPG elements, but then got hijacked by action-oriented elements instead. So, with all of that being said, Final Fantasy producer Naoki Yoshida says that there's no clear-cut answer as to whether or not future entries are going to be turn-based like they used to be. Because the thing is that when Final Fantasy was turn-based, that's when people loved Final Fantasy the most. There is a good reason why people love Final Fantasy 9, 10. Well, 7, 8, 9, one of those games is obviously going to be someone's favorite. Most people generally tend to love 7, but I'm a 9 boy myself. 10, everyone loved. 12, people weren't too much of a fan of the whole license system and all of that stuff. And then 13 onwards, the mainline games certainly did not go back to the, turn-based games of yore, so to speak. So it's just kind of crazy to think that, like, while attempting to make Final Fantasy more of an action-oriented franchise, and especially looking at 16 was just very heavy in the action direction. Well, it was basically an action game. It just had some very, very mild amounts of RPG elements, because you could technically beat enemies that are much higher level than you. It is going to be harder, and you need to be better at dodging and attacking, and just being able to make the right judgment call sometimes. But at the end of the day, you could technically do that if you wanted to. But yeah. So with that being said, let's actually look into this article right here. So Naoki Yoshida, the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV and producer of Final Fantasy XVI, was asked in an interview by Anime News Network for some reason, oh boy, whether mainline Final Fantasy games could go back to being turn-based in the wake of Clair Obscur's success. With this question of turn-based versus action, it tends to isolate the gameplay to just the battle system, says Yoshida. That doesn't take into account what kind of game the creators want to deliver to players. That's absolutely fair, and I get that, but the thing is that that's kind of like the battle system has been the very thing that's kind of defined how some of these games are presented, because if you're putting more action-oriented elements, you're going to have a more Western-style game. Like Final Fantasy XVI, for example, it takes a lot of inspiration from Western-style dark fantasy, with the whole idea of, well, basically royalty, the sharing of power through blood and things like that. That idea is still very much there. But let's just kind of continue on with this quote, because I'm pretty sure he's going to disprove me at some point. For example, based on a certain geographical quality we want to present to our players, or the narrative we want to deliver to our players, it relates to how we set up the game system around it. And that is true. I don't disagree with that. This includes the battle system, game design, and gameplay feel. It's not a clear-cut answer whether it will become all turn-based or if it's going to become more action-based. I'm not necessarily sure going to be on Final Fantasy 17, so we don't want to obstruct or limit our future director or whomever will be producing games like 17 or even 18, Yoshida continues. So it's at least good to know that Square is still considering releasing more Final Fantasy games moving forward. Like, that is at least a cool thing to know. We don't want to put them on a rail, so the current statements that Yoshida is making, he doesn't want to kind of force whatever the next game director is going to be to continue on that path, because Final Fantasy games, especially in the mainline space, have been known to have had different directors during each title, so it is worth keeping that in mind. So the I basically answer is yes, it's all up in the air. Final Fantasy changes with each entry after all, and keeping in mind that each entry not just has its own different battle system sometimes and might take elements from other battle systems from other Final Fantasy games, but the cast and crew of characters are going to be different, the writing is going to be different, so of course we do get varying degrees of quality across each individual title in the mainline franchise. Aside from creating new stories and casts for each mainline numbered entry, each game ranges from highly iterative to full-on evolutions or change-ups. Looking at the gameplay shifts from, say, Final Fantasy 9 through 12 and 13 emphasizes how the series often shakes things up for each successive installment, and keeping in mind that they're not talking about 11 or 14 because those are particularly MMOs. Then we look at something like 15 with the boy band car that you can drive in a relatively empty open world, the battle system being kind of 50-50 on the RPG and action oriented side, and then kind of going into 16 with basically what you would kind of expect to see on a Devil May Cry, if not to that level of involvement in the action oriented department of the actual combat. But that's kind of been one of the main differentiating factors between each of the mainline Final Fantasy games. So I don't know if I'm looking at this from the wrong perspective or something. I mean, you guys can let me know about that in the comments below. I'd be very interested to know if you guys think about things in a fairly different manner, because as a Final Fantasy fan, that's one of those things that people, keep an eye out for, look out for, and kind of keep in mind when it comes to these mainline franchises. What is the main differentiating factor? It's usually the combat that takes center stage, and then everything else just kind of follows up afterwards. But with all of that being said though, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year, and with all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.